Welcome back to Rock Paper Shotgun, and our weekly show where a member of the team recommends a game they love and think you should be playing, handily titled, You Should Be Playing. My name is Noah, and revisiting the grim cyberpunk future in Observer last week reminded me of a claustrophobic horror of a very different kind. The Chinese Room's Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, which just so happens to be my recommendation for this week. Before we dig in, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these recommendations going forward? A first-person sequel to the hugely successful Amnesia: The Dark Descent is a more, shall we say, experimental walking simulator-style horror game. In this steampunk nightmare, you play as amnesiac Oswald Mandus. He's trying to save his children, find out who he is and what went so wrong. That means slow-paced exploration and sniffing about for narrative threads like a pig does truffles, all whilst avoiding these strange, cloven-hoofed monsters, so maybe the pig metaphor wasn't a good one. There's something brilliantly hideous about how it extracts horror from the Victorian attitude to human labour. It's not quite meat grinder horror, but something more disturbing, on the level I would say of Todd Browning's Freaks. The Dark Descent is considered the superior of the two, and probably rightly so, but I want to make the case for this game. So why recommend it? A Machine for Pigs, besides having a wonderful title, does sound and atmosphere within its fictional world masterfully well.
This dawning epoch, this age of reason, an empire grown fat, ripe for the bleeding.
When one pictures the Industrial Revolution, the factories and machines, you think of grime, hard labour, danger and suffering. You think of an entire family living on 2 potatoes, or machines like great metal spiders spinning thread. A Machine for Pigs beautifully folds these elements into something even more horrific than the reality, and it does so, dramatically, through its atmosphere. Playing this game brought back all those horrendous memories studying the Industrial Revolution in primary school, where you learned as a child about little chimney sweeps about your age who got stuck in the flue, only to be discovered, a pile of bones, centuries later during a home renovation. Then there were workers getting caught up in factory mechanisms, as well as starvation and poverty. Delightful stuff, it really was. The game not only taps into these chilling periods and settings of history, but turns up the contrast to flamboyant effect. Seriously, I half expected Vincent Price to step out and talk us through his experiments, or melt into a ball of wax. But as you explore the locations in-game, an enormous house for instance, or the grimy streets of London, underground storehouses and factories, the sound of a machine underpins your footsteps as if it had just woken up. Ah, the eponymous machine. It's just as much a character as Mandus, or the stranger on the phone feeding you clues and riddles. Every puff of scalding steam that the pneumatics eject, each time a heavy boom cuts through the clanging of pipes, you feel crushed under the weight of it. It's a kind of threat, looming both overhead and below, like Jaws. Where this contraption lives is hard to ascertain to start, but you feel its presence immediately, as if it's ready to devour you whole. And the deeper you travel, down into the belly of the beast, the more monstrous this machine becomes, as does the story. But it's this impeccable use of earth-shaking rumblings and ungodly screaming that really put you into the small, relatively speaking, trembling shoes of Mandus. It makes it all a bit repulsive. Silent Hill 2 did a great job of this too, taking something utterly grotesque and making it appealing in some way, or vice versa. Side note, the A Machine for Pigs soundtrack, composed by Jessica Curry, a veteran in the industry and not just brilliantly talented, but doing her part in legitimizing video game music through her work with Classic FM, works to meet these sound effects. In Acquisitions, the scratching of strings sounds like a pig snuffling its way about the floor. What could pass for vocals blow through what sounds like the bilge pump in the track of the same name. And what kind of person would I be without mentioning Mors Prematura, which is one of the most chilling examples of music being used as a part of the living, breathing fictional world. A tortuous piece used to calm the pigs before slaughter, that reprises later. Her work doesn't simply add to, but expands upon the sounds of the machine and tells the pig's horrific story. Language is also used to great effect. As is standard practice with exploration games, you'll find the lumps of external narrative that has become staple in the genre. Descriptions are not unlike Dear Esther's, meaning it's all rather poetic, but they're also grotesque and often very explicit, proving that language, even in a video game's codex entries, can be wielded as a weapon, used to further enhance its atmosphere, not just in a 2 + 2 = this is the history of insert fantasy setting name here kind of way, but by languishing in language. That literary classics as well as steampunk fiction inspired this game's narrative comes through very clearly indeed. Sherlock Holmes and the Glass Book of Dream Eaters are both cited as inspirations. Is any of this subtle? Not hugely. Is it insidious? 1,000 times yes. While playing this game, I was reminded of a family friend of ours. She worked on a farm and described how they could hear the pigs scream all the way to the slaughterhouses. They were smart enough to know what was coming, she said. And it's a chilling thought, isn't it? The idea of turning slaughter into a factory line process is deeply disturbing, and the obvious parallels between slaughterhouses and the dehumanization of factory workers in the industrial age, simply warm bodies to be put to work, are, for a lack of a different term, obvious. Regardless of how unsubtly clear these may be, however, these thematic elements still leave you feeling gross, like you just rolled around in pig guts. And for a horror game, not only creating that feeling of revulsion, like a bad smell, but putting it front and center to equally subtle effect is pretty darn good, if not the embodiment of a contradiction in terms. Though the game doesn't have quite the same number of cheerleaders as Amnesia: The Dark Descent, I hope I've made a decent case for revisiting A Machine for Pigs, or playing it for the first time. So thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you like these ruminations on the sounds of machinery and what pigs got up to in 19th century London, or for arguably brighter things like Bus Simulator 18 antics and tips on how to take care of your T-Rex. We look forward to hearing from you in the comments, and we'll hopefully see you soon.